session is, in some respects, slightly more challenging, although it would appear at the face of it a simpler session to deliver. In so far as what we're going to do today is we're going to do a fly-through of the Xero software. And the purpose really is to give you an overview of the software, give you a confidence in using accounting software. I can't vouch for other software packages that are out there, such as QuickBooks, Sage. There are many others, because I haven't used them. But I would imagine that the intuitiveness, the user-friendly elements of them are probably consistent across most packages. So I don't really think there's a massive amount to choose between the different packages, and it's probably worth having a chat with your accountant, because at the end of the year, your accountant will be taking the information from your bookkeeping package and then turning that into a tax computation. So it's always good to use a package that your accountant has some familiarity with as well. Indeed, many accountants have tie-ups with the software packages where they have the accountancy element of the package, and their clients have the client element of the package, and the accountant gets some kind of kickback for every client that subscribes. So the thing about Xero, if we just talk about the Xero package, it's roughly £23 a month. If you have more than one company running with Xero, you will get a discount per company. So if you had 2 companies, it might be 46, but if you have 3, it might be a little bit less than 3 times 23 or whatever the current monthly price is. It's somewhere around the £23, £24 a month mark. So you can just literally go onto Xero, and all the information about subscribing is there. That's nice and easy. So what I'm going to do now is open up Xero in the share, and I'm going to do what I'm going to call a fly-through. I'm going to go through, I'm going to enter a couple of invoices, but really I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail about the functionality. I'm just going to go over some of the main functionality that gives you a feel for what it can do for you and how it can improve upon what you've currently got. In the next session, I will probably do another fly-through of some of the more advanced elements of using Xero. One of the reasons it's a little bit more challenging to deliver this is because the use of Xero is so intuitive that I'm in danger of teaching you something that is just too simplistic. You know, that I might just say, well, look, this is how to enter an invoice, and go through every singular part of it. I could spend 20 minutes on entering one invoice. And you're thinking, well, look, you know, I mean, quite frankly, when you go to enter an invoice, by the time you've entered 3 or 4 invoices, you'll have learnt all that in any case. It's very, very intuitive from that point of view. So let's share the screen, and I'm going to be sharing a screen of a live company, which is my own company. So please don't take too much information away from it. Let me just see, there we go. So just bear with me where. Okay, I am sharing the screen. It's just brought a different screen up in front of it, so that's confused me, so apologies for that. Okay, so this is my property company. It's a limited company. If you are owning property in your own name, then you could call it your own name, or you could call it whatever property. So it doesn't have to be a limited company in order to do Xero accounts. Mine is, and that's where it is there. So just a quick overview and a quick look. This is the main screen that you get, which is the dashboard. I'm just going to make everything a little bit bigger. There we go. And you can change the dashboard, like in many packages of this nature. So you can have on the dashboard what you want to see, and you can edit the dashboard accordingly. But for me, I've just left it as it comes when I bought the package, and it works perfectly fine for me. So what we've got here is bank accounts. I have 3 bank accounts which I use for this limited company. Many would only have 1. So if you could imagine just seeing 1 bank account there would be more normal. And here I've got, you see, I've got a debit card bank account as well. So that's just particular to me, so don't worry too much about that. The reason I had to set up a second business account here is because I got a commercial mortgage with Lloyds, and one of the conditions of that commercial mortgage was that I had a Lloyds business bank account, and that the rent from those properties had to go into that bank account. So that's why I've got this Lloyds RC Woodhouse bank account and my original bank account with Nedbank up there. Then I have petty cash. In my property business, I rarely use petty cash, if I'm honest, and it will always show in your as a default on your dashboard there. I have another business which runs my serviced accommodation business, and in that business then the petty cash plays a part, because I often pay the cleaners in cash, or I might nip down to the shop and buy some cleaning fluid or something of that nature in cash. So petty cash is used in many trading businesses, but in our property businesses it's less used, but can be from time to time. Petty cash is in effect, as far as the accounting software is concerned, as far as Xero is concerned, is in effect another bank account. And I did mention this in the last session when we talked about the bank, that petty cash is basically yet another bank account. The difference being is that you get a bank statement from your bank account.
Just put it over here.
And you get a bank statement from your bank account, but you don't get a bank statement from your own petty cash tin, and that's something you have to create yourself from that point of view. Now, I'm just going to take a quick minute's break to check my waiting room to see if there's anybody else who wants to come in.
No. If you did this like this.
So I'm just going to mute Satinder, if that's all right. That's good. So there we go. The other aspects of the dashboard you can see here is invoices owed to you. And these are invoices that you create. So this is income coming into you. You create those invoices, and that's where you create invoices. And the other aspect of it is bills you need to pay. And that's where you pay those bills, and you'll receive a bill either by email or through the post. And then you'll have the paper bill in front of you, and you enter that bill in there. And if there are any expense claims that you make, you can enter expense claims in here as well. So that's the main components of the dashboard. So I'm going to have a quick look at the bank first. So we go to the bank, and what you can see up here is you have the bit that you would very much recognize, which is the bank statement. Now, as you can see here, that the most recent entry in the bank statement is 21st of May. I don't enter this information into Xero, the bank does. It's very clever. Through this aspect here, bank feeds, you can set up a bank feed. And most banks will accept bank feeds. So you go in, you say activate a bank feed. It will actually take you into your banking software. You log into your bank in the normal way, and that will then set the feed up. And then automatically the bank statements appear here. So this is a payment that I actually made to a plumber yesterday for jetting out some shower waste pipes, and he did the work yesterday. He phoned me yesterday to say the work is done, and sent me an email with the invoice. And as I try to do with all of my tradespeople, I try to keep them sweet, put myself at the top of the queue, of their queue, by having a reputation with them that Rupert's the guy that pays them within minutes of them asking for the money. That's a really good live example of what's going on there, and that's in the bank statement here. But apart from that, the bank statement looks pretty similar to what you do see on a paper statement that comes through. If your bank did not have the facility for bank feeds, which happens to be the case with this bank of mine, you can see that the last entry of the bank statement here is the 29th of April. And the reason that that is once a month I import the information into the bank statement. And that's not too difficult to do. First, I've got to download the information from the bank statement, the bank software, into an Excel or a CSV file. And then from that file, I have to import the statement here. So feeds are much better. Most banks do feeds, they're automatically in, but if you don't get a feed, you can import a statement from there. And then it's important to control your bank balance, your bank statements to your bank account. On 3 occasions in the last 3 years, I have had a difference on my Xero bank statement with my actual bank statement, and it's because there has been some software problems in the feed. There might have been 1 or 2 days where the feed just didn't happen, and therefore there were 3 missing entries here. And then I had to manually import those entries in order to get the balances to match. So generally speaking, it always works perfectly, but part of your month-end controls would be that every month you do actually control that the Xero bank statement and the actual bank statement is controlled, the balances are controlled there. Within this bank statement area here, there is this area here called account transactions. This generally happens to be something that you look at the end of the month when you are looking to see if everything is properly entered and everything. And I'll come back to account transactions and how these entries are appearing in this account transaction area. Bank statement is the key. That's the one that I use the most because obviously that's what we're familiar with and that's what reflects our normal bank statement. And then we have this reconcile here. And what a reconcile does is actually it lists everything on the bank statement that you haven't already coded, okay, that you haven't dealt with as such. So these are items on the bank statement that you haven't added an invoice for, you haven't added a bill for, you haven't made any of those journal entries as we've seen, and so it's telling you you need to do it. And you can do it from here. From the reconcile area, you can reconcile your bank all the way up to date, okay? And you can literally just say, okay, this is my plumber, you see, I paid him £880 last week, and so I can put the name of the plumber in, I can say this is repairs, it's for plumbing, I choose which property it's for, and I'll come back to that in a minute. If there was VAT, I put the VAT rate in. Under add details, I can add more, I can even append his electronic invoice to that as well, okay? And then I click it will bring up an OK there like that. You click the OK and it is reconciled and it's dealt with, okay? So you don't need, in order to do bookkeeping in Xero, you don't need to enter sales invoices. You don't need to enter bills. You could, if you chose, literally just do all your bookkeeping directly from your bank statements. Now, if we were to have to go back 4 months because we've decided to start using Xero, but the beginning of the financial year was 4 months ago, the likelihood is most of your work to bring things up to date will be from the bank statements. Okay, because it's already in the bank statement and that's where it's at. And your posting, for example, if we can remember back to what we spoke about in the last session, is that if we choose the account here, you only choose the one account, okay, even though it's double entry bookkeeping, you only choose the one account here, which is the repairs account, okay. And it's, you can either put the number in or you can just start to type repairs and up it comes. So it's very, very clever how it makes life easy for you. And if you choose a repairs account there and then reconcile it, then it will debit the repairs account with £880 based on the 15th of May 2020, and it would credit your bank account with the same amount at the same date. So that's where you get the debit, the double entry, the credit and the debit transactions, okay? So that's how that would work. However, and if you remember the end of the last session, we talked about accounts payable, okay? If you were to receive that bill from the plumber, and you had the bill on your desk, or you've electronically received it by email, you can enter that bill here, okay? And when you enter that bill, you would enter the same account number. It would look very similar to what you've done before. You'd enter the same account number, you'd enter the repairs, okay? But because you're entering a bill, the credit entry will not be your bank statement because you haven't yet reconciled it to your bank. When you enter your bill, the credit side of the entry is the accounts payable account. And if you're not sure about what I'm talking about now, go back to the last session and look at the last 5 minutes of the last session. And you'll see that what we said is that the accounts payable is transactions that have been made but have not yet hit your bank account. So if you're completely up to date with your bookkeeping and every day something comes in and you immediately enter it, then you'd enter the new bill there. Okay, you may not have paid the bill yet, but you still enter it in. You then, when you make a payment, you go back into that bill, you mark that payment as paid. And then the first entry you do would have credited accounts payable against the debit of the repairs. Then when you go to reconcile your bank, it will appear here with this pre-populated, okay? Because you have previously entered it on a bill. And it's clever enough to say, look, it's £880, it's the 15th of May, it must be that transaction. It does give you the chance that just in case there were more than one transaction at £880, it would then warn you of that, and you can then choose from the list of £880 transactions on the 15th of May. But it's intuitive, it suggests that that must be the bill, so it's sitting there waiting for you to say, okay, that's the bill. And when you press okay, you've then reconciled it to your bank account. What happens then is there is another journal entry where the £880 is now credited to your bank account and is debited to your accounts payable. So when you entered the bill, your accounts payable was credited by the 880. When you've reconciled to the bank account, the accounts payable is debited to the 880, and that brings your accounts payable back to zero. Very simple. I'm talking about what's happening in the background as I'm talking through and flying through this. to be honest, if one was teaching a data entry clerk or something like that, in order to do what the tasks that are involved, you don't have to know what's going on in the background. You can just literally say, this is what you have to do. When you get a bill, you do this. When you get a bank statement, you do this. So the thing about the software is it makes it so easy, but it does actually make it too easy in a way that you don't actually have to have the background understanding in order to use it. So I'm going to come back to the dashboard now, and I'm going to come back to, and I'm going to actually enter an invoice. Okay, so and just show you just quite how easy it is. Now this reflects very similar to what you saw on the right-hand side of that bank statement. Just a little bit more information here, but even with the bank statement, you could have expanded it to a screen that looked very similar to this. So this is a brand new invoice that I want to enter. Okay. Now previously I've received an invoice by email from an agent, and this is where the agent has sent me some money and given me a statement of the money that they've sent me. So I'm going to now enter that. Now I may have had it through the post, in which case it would be in front of me and I'd just be entering it off the piece of paper. If so, what I would do is I'd take it to my scanner and I'd scan it in, and I would email it from scan directly into Xero. There is an email address to every Xero account. So I wouldn't email it to myself, I'd just email it directly to Xero. And if I emailed it directly to Xero, it would sit here. Okay. So here it is. I can preview it to check it's the right invoice. And this is one for 312. That's the invoice that I'm interested in. Okay. And this is from a letting agent. And then I'm going to say, okay, I want to append that invoice, this to my invoice here. So I click it there, I add the file, okay? And the next time I go in to that files section from preview here, add file from library, it's no longer there. Okay, at the moment it's showing grayed out because I haven't finished this, but once I've finished doing what I'm doing, that won't show anymore. So it takes it out of your library of invoices. So here it is. I need to enter this invoice. I can move it around the screen so that I can see what I'm doing. Okay, and so let's go ahead. So I'm going to enter in to Maple Leaf. Okay, it remembers that I've done one before. The date is very important because when you do your profit and loss account, you'll be looking at what month will your profit and loss account be, what time period are you going to enter in. So it's important that this invoice date here is entered correctly here, because that's the month that it's going to put it in your profit and loss account. Okay, it's also very important, even more important, if you have VAT, because that would be the tax point date, and it's important that you pay the VAT at the right time. So we're looking at the 14th of May here. Okay, you need to put a due date in. The fact is that I know the money's already come into my bank account. I just generally put the due date in as something, normally the end of that month, if I don't actually have a specific due date that I have to put in. The invoice number is generated automatically by Xero. If you want to add an invoice reference, you can do. In this case, I won't. And then we then have to enter the importance of the invoice. Now, ignore the fact that these are all electric cards that my tenants have paid. I just put it all that in. There's some rental income down here as well. So there you are, you've got £368 of rental income. So I'm going to say it's rent, okay. So it's one lot of 368, one quantity. So you might, if it was an invoice where you sold 10 of £10, you could put 10 as a quantity and £10 as a unit price, or you could put 1 as a quantity and £100 as a unit price. It depends on how you want to see things broken down in the future. Okay, so here the unit price is 368. Okay, if it were that there were a number of lines here and they didn't put a total on there, let's say there was a line of 360 and a line of 8, I could write in there 360 plus 8. Okay, 368. So it's very intuitive. Don't need to put equal signs or anything like that. Just do it like that. If you are playing with discount, that's the area that you use there. We're not. It goes into the sales account. We have preset everything in this particular company not to have VAT, okay, because we are not VAT registered, so we're not interested in VAT, so we ignore that property there. And here I've set up specifically in the settings of the business what we call tracking codes, which I'm going to show you a little bit later today, where we can then say, okay, what property is it? So I can see it's 52 North Church Street is the property, and there you are. So, and the great thing about this is it means that when I look at my performance reports, I can look at any period of time per property, and I can see exactly, so I can see a year's worth of this property, I can see a month with all the properties listed in different columns, and we can compare utility bills and so on and so forth. Then my agent takes a management fee. Okay, so I just put that in. You might want to be more specific. I just put MF, which is my little coding for management fees. So we've got one lot of management fees there, which is £55.20. Now, because this is an invoice and because £55.20 is being withheld from that invoice and is actually a cost, I put a minus in there. Okay, there we go. So it's minus £55.20. And Xero is clever enough to remember what I've done in the past and has actually told me what the account number is. Now I can change that if I'm not happy with it, if Xero has got it wrong. So you do need to double check. But Xero is very, very intuitive and helpful, and it tries to make your life as easy as possible by suggesting things. And in this case, it's suggested, based on what I've done in the past, that that should be agency fees. It's a 3 account there. It falls under the cost of sales, because if I had no sales, I wouldn't have any agency fee. And again, I've got to make sure that that cost is attributed to that property. Okay, because of course I might be entering an invoice here from an agency that is dealing with multiple properties, and the multiple properties might be on the same invoice. So there we are. £312.80 is the bottom, £312.80 is there, so I can approve that invoice. Okay. Now I'm reacting to the fact that the agency has sent me that information, but what I'm actually doing in reality is I'm actually creating an invoice, as if I would be saying I'm going to create an invoice and I'm going to send it to the agency for the agency to then pay me. So in reality, what's happening, and if you think about this in terms of many trading businesses, you know, you create the invoice, you then send the invoice, you then wait for the invoice to be paid. Okay, so I'm doing it slightly in arrears here, where the agency has actually said, I've paid you and here's my statement, and I'm creating the invoice from that information. So the question is, well, has that invoice been paid? Okay, well, as of now and as of this screen right here, I don't know if it's been paid. I could go back to the bank. I could ask the bank, look at the bank statement to see has that invoice been paid. And then I could come back here and I could say, yes, it was paid on this date and it's been paid. But really, this area here is more, let's go back to the old days where you issue an invoice and the people send you a check. Okay, so the following day or following week, you then look at your checks, you go into this invoice and you see on your desk there's a check there for £312.80. So you would then say, yes, it's been paid. Okay, the date paid is this date, and paid to would be the bank. Okay, so you choose whether it's paid cash or whichever bank it's paid to. And then it would be sitting waiting for you when you do your bank reconciliation. But you don't actually need to enter this receiver payment area, because you could just wait until you do your bank reconciliation. So I'm going to show you that now. So we go in here. And if you've got a good memory or want to go back on the slider, if you're watching this on YouTube, you will notice that this entry was there when I showed it to you earlier, but it wasn't green and it didn't have an OK next to it. But now I've entered it as an invoice, the software has picked it up and it's seen it. And even though I haven't marked it as being paid by this bank account, okay, it knows 312.80, 312.80, 14th of May, 15th of May, this looks pretty good here, I'm going for it. So it's suggesting that to me. I don't have to accept that. I can say, no, that's wrong. I'm still waiting for the 312. This 312 is for something else. And I could create, or I could find a match, or, you know, so you don't have to accept what Xero is saying, but it makes your reconciliation of the bank much, much quicker if you can just literally go down, yep, that's right, yep, that's right, that's right, and just click the OK. So I'm going to click OK there, and it disappears from the reconciled area because that has now been reconciled. Okay, and that is really the end of that invoice. I'm done with it. And what's happened in the background is I've entered the invoice, it's credited the sales, it's debited the accounts receivable, and then I've reconciled the invoice, which has credited the accounts receivable and debited the bank. Okay, so there's been 3 accounts involved in this, but the accounts receivable has been that holding account between the time that the invoice was initially entered and then the bank was reconciled. Just coming back to something I said I would come back to, on your bank you have this area here called account transactions. And this lists everything that you either have reconciled in the bank already by clicking that OK, or things that are not yet reconciled. And those were, if we go back to the paid element of that invoice, had I entered that invoice as paid and had I said it was paid by this to this bank account, okay, then it would automatically make it sit here in this area here. And until it's reconciled by the bank, okay, it would sit here and be marked as unreconciled. So one of the things you do at the end of the month is you come to this little area and you look to see if, is there anything unreconciled here? It could be that I have entered it as an invoice, but then somehow maybe I had coded it directly in the bank and therefore it might be in twice. So if you find anything that's unreconciled at the end of the month here in accounts transactions, then that's something you need to be mindful of there. Okay. So, I want to show you the profit and loss report. I want to show you the balance sheet report here. I want to show you the charts of accounts and show you a little bit about that tracking overview, which enables us to set things up on a per property basis. But right now, my computer has just completely frozen, and I'm not sure if it's going to turn itself off or do something. So I might lose you, or I may have already lost you. If so, I'm going to restart the whole session in 5 minutes' time.
I can still hear you, Rupert.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for that. That's useful. So we're just going to have a little comfort break while we resolve the fact that absolutely nothing is happening on my computer right now. other than a frozen screen of me in the corner and the screen of the bank statement. No mouse anymore. I did have a mouse, it didn't work, and now I don't. So I'm going to have to probably go through a complete reboot of the computer.
It's bizarre, Rupert. Your audio is perfect, but the your video is a little bit jittery.
Right.
Your screen's not doing anything, but yeah, it's
really interesting.
Audio is perfect.
Yeah, there's little I can do at this end. I'm sorry, so I'm going to let's have a comfort break, and I'm going to start the session again in 5 minutes.
Okay, see you in 5.